I'm Laurie Cardoza-Moore, and this is Focus on Israel. Do you know what day is the real Sabbath? The day commanded by God is a day of rest. On this edition of Focus on Israel, we're going to discuss this confusing topic from a biblical perspective. Hello, I'm Laurie Cardoza-Moore, and welcome to our show today. Like most Americans, I began to ask a lot of questions about what happened to our country following 9/11. As I read and talked to experts, the issues of radical Islam and the attacks on America and Israel became extremely important to me. In response, I founded Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating and sharing the message of Christian biblical responsibility to the people and land of Israel against the rise of global genocidal anti-Semitism. After studying the scriptures, I realized that God had not forsaken his covenant with his people, Israel. Unfortunately, there is a growing trend in Christianity to spread an age-old false doctrine and tradition called replacement theology. This heretical doctrine suggests that because the Jews denied Christ, the covenant promises given to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and their descendants now belong to the church. That is why during the Holocaust, many Christians turned a blind eye to the Nazi death camps. Many felt justified in their passive and active involvement because they believed the Jews were the Christ killers. For this reason, we must educate ourselves and share these truths. It is so very important that at this critical time in history, we must turn our focus on Israel. Today, we're going to be delving into exactly what is the Sabbath. Is it just for Jews? Should a Christian worship on Saturday? Did Jesus' followers continue worshiping on Saturday after the resurrection, or did they mysteriously switch to Sunday? When did Gentile believers begin meeting and keeping Sunday as their day of worship instead of Saturday? What did Jews think about Christians celebrating the Sabbath? To me, it's perhaps one of the most interesting aspects of not only the Holy Bible, but also the history of mankind and Christianity, and it's all summed up in a single day, the Sabbath. It was first mentioned the day after the first man, Adam, was created. God set apart the seventh day of the week from the other six. And it is so important, God made it one of the famous 10 Commandments, telling us to remember the Sabbath and to keep it holy. For thousands of years, this day of rest was observed on the seventh day of the week, Saturday. But if you ask Christians today, which day is the Sabbath of God? Most will undoubtedly answer Sunday. Just how and why did this change take place? Since the seventh-day Sabbath has such deep meaning, and since it is part of the 10 Commandments, why is it not more widely observed today? Why and who changed the Christian day of rest on Saturday to the primary day of worship on Sunday? Rabbi Shlomo Riskin of Efrat, Israel, has made it his life goal to bring Jewish traditions back to the Jewish people and train rabbis to do the same. His most recent endeavor has been the Center for Jewish-Christian Understanding and Cooperation. He says that there are sincere, wholehearted Christians who see the beauty of Jewish traditions. He goes on to say, if more and more Christians want to live the traditions as Yeshua did, it will finally compel more and more Jews to return to those traditions as Jews. The rabbi ponders, when Messiah comes, won't he be asking the Christians, why Sunday? Yeshua went to synagogue on Saturday. Then there's Brad Young, a professor of Judaic Christian Studies in the Graduate School of Theology and Missions at Oral Roberts University. He received his PhD at Hebrew University in Jerusalem in comparative religions, exploring the relationship between early Judaism and early Christianity. He notes that Christians are missing an entire world because they have no comprehension of the roots of the faith. He adds that more and more Christians are beginning to comprehend Jesus was a Jew. Jesus never changed religions. Brad says that to understand the Bible, we must learn about the foundations of the faith. More and more Christians are learning Hebrew, learning Jewish interpretation of Scripture, and finding the foundation for their own experience. Given a little insight from these prominent scholars, the Gentile believer can better understand their place embracing Sabbath as a holy day. So how did the day of worship change from Saturday to Sunday, from the time of Jesus and his followers to the present day? At one point in my life, I felt I had to know why I should or should not keep the Sabbath. I went back to the Bible, asking God to show me the truth. After years of reading the Word and studying, I concluded that the law, the Torah, was given to the Jews, and if one followed the law, one had to keep all the law as given to Moses, not just the 10 Commandments. In Exodus 12, verse 49, it states, "There shall be one law, or Torah, for the native and for the stranger who sojourns among you." No Jew believes they must keep Torah to be saved. As it states in the New Testament, Abraham was made righteous by faith. It is no different for any other Jew or believer in Yeshua. Instead, as Orthodox Jews believe, Torah is a guide to living that brings one closer to God. Looking closer, I learned that anti-Semitism beginning around 135 CE caused a division between Yeshua-believing Jews and Gentiles in the first century Messianic community. At the Council of Nicaea around 312 CE, Constantine de-Judaized the faith by changing the day of worship from Saturday to Sunday and forbidding the celebration of all Jewish holidays. But Matthew 5:18 quotes Jesus saying, "Yes, indeed, I tell you, that until heaven and earth pass away, not so much as a yud or a stroke will pass from the Torah, not until everything that must happen has happened." I would say those red letter sections are very important. Plus, we know that heaven and earth have not passed away, and all the prophecies of the Old Testament have not been fulfilled. So why have we accepted the false doctrine that it has? The doctrine that the Torah is invalid now. Increasingly, I see the necessity of understanding Judaism to understand the world, culture, and fabric in which the scriptures were written. The bottom line, Gentile Christianity that is not grafted into the natural vine of Judaism is not getting the lifeblood and foundation on which to build a true faith. The promotion of Sunday, commonly called the Lord's Day, was an integral part of the Reformation era conflict over church authority. The story of the Sabbath illuminates the heroic struggle for religious liberty fought through long centuries of repression and inquisition. We must come to see that the Sabbath stands as a sanctuary in time, transcending history and projecting its promise of rest into the eternal future. Next up, we'd like to play you an excerpt from a fantastic 5-part television documentary called The Seventh Day: Revelations from the Lost Pages of History, hosted by award-winning actor Hal Holbrook. It powerfully chronicles how the Sabbath day of the Bible was observed, fought for, and tragically discarded by Christians as a non-binding Jewish tradition.
After the creation of human beings, the Bible reports that God marked the end of creation with a day of rest, thus establishing the weekly cycle for human life.
Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made.
God creates the entire world in 6 days, and then he rests on the Sabbath. The Sabbath is, though, a creation in and of itself, because what it does is put the rest of the 6 days in perspective.
What did God create on the seventh day? As a matter of fact, God created nothing on the seventh day. God created no thing, but instead God created a context in which everything that has been created, the natural world, the material world, and life itself, can really be appreciated and enjoyed and celebrated.
By creating the Sabbath, God gave human beings an opportunity to emulate him, to enter into his rest, and thereby to signify their special relationship with him as their Lord and Creator.
This month marks the 70th anniversary of the historic Declaration of the State of Israel. God's sovereign hand can be seen all over this land. Included in the celebrations is the opening of the American Embassy right here in Jerusalem. In honor of this celebration, PJTN is offering a special 70th anniversary package, which includes a captivating new book and an award-winning DVD. Israel Rising is a unique visual story of Israel's miraculous journey from unforgiving desert to thriving nation. Thousands of years ago, the prophet Ezekiel foretold a future time in which the arid land of Israel would come alive for its people. Now this breathtaking book documents the fulfillment of this vision, as rarely seen photographs from the 1880s to the 1940s are juxtaposed with recent photos of the same locations. This book will inspire and captivate you as it illuminates Israel's foretold awakening in a new and unforgettable way. In addition, you'll receive the award-winning documentary, Israel Indivisible: The Case for the Ancient Homeland. This inspiring film examines the many political twists and turns that make Israel the world's most controversial nation. From Abraham and the Promise to the issues facing the Jewish state today, the film examines the historical, archaeological, legal, and biblical foundations for the modern state of Israel. This is a limited time offer for these two remarkable resources for just a one-time gift of $70 today. Your generous donation will help ensure that PJTN stays on the front lines and in the headlines of all the important issues facing Israel and our Jewish brethren. So please go to pjtn.org today. From studying history, it's very clear that what starts with the Jews never ends only with the Jews. We must strongly stand against any anti-Semitic trends, for if not stopped, they'll cause harm to all of us, and we'll witness the downfall of our Judeo-Christian Western culture. Today, many people say there's no longer a need for a Jewish state, that Jews around the world no longer need a place of refuge. But anyone who has heard recent statistics about the worldwide rise in anti-Semitism would never make such a claim. The reality is that neo-Nazi groups and Nazi sympathizers are increasing around the world. Surveys show that over 1 billion people in the world harbor anti-Semitic attitudes. Close to 50% believe that Jews have too much power in the business world, and 2/3 of the world's population has never heard of the Holocaust or believe the historic accounts of it are inaccurate. Don't let yourself be manipulated by evil people with a wicked agenda. When the self-serving villains are in control, good people from all religions suffer. Muslims, Christians, and all people of conscience should stand proudly and show respect for a country that gives so much to the world in so many ways. Do your part, do your research, and do what you can to make a difference. Because what happens in Israel does affect us all. This is not just a Jewish or just an Israeli problem. This is a problem for all humanity, for each and every one of us who believe in freedom and human rights. Learn more about what you can do at pjtn.org.
According to the Old Testament report, the Creator God revealed the principles of his relationship with the human race in 10 commandments engraved on stone tablets. These commandments were entrusted to Abraham's descendants, the Israelites, as a blessing to share with all nations of the world.
Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it.
This is by far the longest of the 10 Commandments. It's unique in that it includes the divine credentials, declaring the identity of the lawgiver and establishing his authority as creator to command the worship of his creatures.
The commandment to observe the Sabbath shows the intimate relationship between God and creation. It shows that God not only creates, not only works to bring everything that is into being, the physical world, the natural world, and all that lives in it, but it also shows that God maintains intimate relationship with creation and steps back to withhold and to take in, as it were, everything that has been created, and celebrates and cherishes that which has been created.
The Sabbath reveals God's compassion for his creatures. In Exodus 23, verse 12, there's a law regarding the Sabbath, and it says, 6 days you shall do your work, but on the seventh day you shall rest, that your ox and your ass may have rest, and the son of your bondmaid and the alien may be refreshed. So the Sabbath is a gift for God's creatures, not only human beings here, but it's also the ox and the ass, so that they can have rest from their labor that they do during the rest of the week.
In the 5th book of the Bible, Deuteronomy, we find the 10 Commandments repeated. This time, the meaning of the Sabbath is enriched by linkage to the deliverance of the nation of Israel from slavery in Egypt.
Keep the Sabbath day to sanctify it, as the Lord thy God hath commanded thee. And remember that thou wast a servant in the land of Egypt, and that the Lord thy God brought thee out thence through a mighty hand and by a stretched out arm. Therefore the Lord thy God commanded thee to keep the Sabbath day.
We participate in God's redemption, just as the nation of Israel participated in God's redemption, because God has liberated us from something. Now, he liberated the ancient Israelites from Egypt, from Pharaoh, this oppressor. What God does is to liberate us as individuals from the oppressive power of Satan and from the sin that destroys us.
Individuals today are in great need of finding a sanctuary in time, which is what the Sabbath is. We are overburdened and driven by the material world and by our own creativity of material things. And the Sabbath becomes the liberation from things. It becomes the liberation from slavery to objects, to technology, to economics, to all the things that make us work frantically towards producing more and more.
Since the seventh-day Sabbath has such rich meaning, and since it is part of the 10 Commandments, why is it not more widely observed today? Good question, especially in view of the widespread recognition that this commandment, along with the rest of the 10, applies not only to the people of Israel, but to the whole human family.
As it is the law of nature that in general a due proportion of time be set apart for the worship of God, so in his word, by a positive, moral, and perpetual commandment, binding all men in all ages, he hath particularly appointed 1 day in 7 for a Sabbath, to be kept holy unto him. The Sabbath was binding in Eden, and it has been in force ever since. This 4th commandment begins with the word remember, showing that the Sabbath already existed when God wrote this law on the tables of stone at Sinai. How can men claim that this one commandment has been done away with, when they will admit that the other 9 are still binding? The Sabbath was made for man, not for the Hebrews, but for all men.
The Sabbath commandment reveals to us a picture of a Creator who craves a place in the hearts and lives of all his human children. David, the great Israelite king, understood this and instructed his people to spread their knowledge of the Creator God to the rest of the world.
Declare his glory among the heathen, his marvelous works among all nations. For all the gods of the people are idols, but the Lord made the heavens. Give unto the Lord the glory due unto his name, and let men say among the nations, the Lord reigneth.
The Bible makes it clear that the Creator's desire was to attract the whole human family to true religion, true worship, so that all could share in the good things he intended to do for Israel.
Also the sons of the stranger that join themselves to the Lord to serve him and to love the name of the Lord, to be his servants. Every one that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it, and taketh hold of my covenant, even them will I bring to my holy mountain, and make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be accepted upon mine altar, for mine house shall be called an house of prayer for all people.
It's not hard to imagine the power of the Sabbath to restore and cement the relationship between the Creator God and his human children. Their devotion to the Sabbath day, their worship and praise and appreciation for his creative power would bind them to their God with ties of love and gratitude. If they continued their heartfelt observance of the Sabbath, they could never forget him.
Moreover, also I gave them my Sabbaths, to be a sign between me and them, that they might know that I am the Lord that sanctify them.
To learn more, I highly recommend this very thorough 5-part documentary. When we go deeper into the Sabbath on a future show, we'll feature another excerpt from the 7th day. More and more Christians are coming to the revelation and celebration of the true Sabbath. One such person who has seen the light is our next guest, Mr. Joseph Farah. Joseph Farah is an American author, journalist, and editor-in-chief of the conservative website WND.com. Born to parents of Syrian and Lebanese ancestry, he's a bit of a contradiction as an Arab-American Christian journalist. Farah worked for 6 years as executive news editor at the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, later became editor of the Sacramento Union. In 1991, Farah left the Union and co-founded the Western Journalism Center. And in 1996, he received the Washington Times Foundation National Service Award. He gave me great spiritual insight into why the Sabbath was made for man.
As a young person, kid, growing up in the Catholic Church as I did, I was always troubled by certain things like, reading the 10 Commandments and this Sabbath thing. I didn't understand why it is that, we're supposed to obey all these commandments, but I knew we weren't. What happened with that one? Why were we exempt from that? I knew that Sunday wasn't the Sabbath. And so that was a thing that, was there. It was poking at me. And over the years, it never went away. And so I always loved the Sabbath. Like when, I grew up around in a Jewish community, predominantly Jewish community. So I loved the Sabbath was just a neat thing. And when I went to Israel, this is a really good idea. It's just a great idea. Forget that it's one of God's commandments for a second. It's a great practical idea for people. And so, about 5 years ago, we do very intensive Bible studies at home, Elizabeth and the kids and so forth. And I just dropped this bomb one day, and I said, basically, I can't think of any reason, and just focused on the Sabbath for a minute, because I think that's what got us into the issue more deeply. I can't think of any justification for not observing the Sabbath. I know that You know, most Christians don't. But what's the biblical reason for that? Why don't we dive into this? And that's what we started doing. And then got to discover a whole bunch of great teachers out there after the fact who are real, and you know, whose work is really getting out there and reaching more and more people all the time. And I think the Holy Spirit is just totally at work on this right now. I think that this is God's timing on this. I think He's preparing the church for what's about to come in the kingdom.
That's our show for today, and I want you to know we appreciate hearing from you. Please send your comments and questions to comments@pjtn.org. The time to take a stand is now. Be a leader in your community and in your church. One person can make a difference. Get involved with and support pro-Israel organizations such as PJTN. Call your senators, congressmen, the White House. Let your elected leaders hear from you. Visit our website to learn more. Sign up to receive action alerts and order our films to share with family and friends. Please encourage everyone you know to tune in and become informed. God bless you, and thank you for all you do on behalf of our Jewish brethren and all Israel. We'll see you next time on Focus on Israel.
To support this program, send your tax-deductible gift to Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, P.O. Box 682711, Franklin, Tennessee 37068. You can also support PJTN online. Visit pjtn.org or call 1-877-873-9020. Focus on Israel is now available on DVD. Each program DVD contains a wealth of bonus materials, including the premier program that started it all, Focus on Israel, program number 1. Also, bonus interview cuts with experts in their respective fields. Informational videos from PJTN documentaries, including Israel Indivisible, The Case for the Ancient Homeland. Lest We Forget, 9/11 and the Rise of Islam. The Forgotten People, Christianity and the Holocaust. Disinformation, the secret strategy to destroy the West. Plus the award-winning music video, The Forgotten People. Focus on Israel program DVDs, great educational tools to combat anti-Semitism. Arm yourself and order today. Please go online to pjtn.org. To order, just click on the Store tab. Thanks and blessings from Focus on Israel.